Hello, and welcome to another installment of the Law & Order video series, a series where I look at and unpack stories from games. In this one, we'll be looking at the recently released interactive horror experience from Supermassive Games, The Quarry. I previously made videos on Until Dawn, Man of Medan, Little Hope and House of Ashes, so make sure to check those out too if you haven't already. There will be massive spoilers in this video, so please bear that in mind before continuing on with this one. As with these games, there are multiple paths you can go down, so certain points of your story may have played out differently to how mine did. This story explanation is based on the outcome of everyone surviving, so bear that in mind too. Alright, let's get to it. Two teenagers are on their way to Hackett's Quarry summer camp in upstate New York to serve as camp counselors for the summer. For some reason, these two, Max and Laura, decided to go there early, with Laura stating she called ahead and told head counselor and owner Mr. Hackett that they would be arriving early. After looking at a map, Max takes his eyes off the road, and when he looks up, he sees someone crouched down in the road. Swerving to avoid whoever was in the road, the car crashes through the barricade and rolls down the hill, eventually coming to a stop. The car needs some repairs, so whilst Max is fixing the car, Laura heads down the bank after seeing a mysterious woman in the trees. Laura explores and finds the remnants of what appears to be a travelling magic show called Harem Scarum, as well as a mysterious open cage which reads Silas the Dog Boy. After realising walking around in a dark forest in the middle of the night isn't the best of ideas, Laura hightails it out of there after hearing the creepy old woman whispering in her ear. She reaches Max and they get into the car, and just about to leave they are approached, startled by the local county sheriff. The sheriff, after giving off some major creepy vibes, asks them what they're up to in the woods in the middle of the night. A very fair question, and one in which the teenagers answer. They tell the officer what happened, and after some more creepy behaviour, he tells Laura and Max to go straight to the Harbinger Motel in town instead of going to Hackett's Quarry. He seems very adamant that they go there and walks back to his car. But due to Max and Laura being broke and not being able to afford a motel room for the night, they make their way to Hackett's Quarry, but when they get there, there's no one else around, despite there being an abandoned car. Max is annoyed at Laura and asks if she even spoke to Mr. Hackett, to which she responds that she left him a message. After snooping around, Laura peeks through a gap into a storm shelter and sees a figure hunched over inside the shelter. Assuming they're trapped and in trouble, Max and Laura break into the storm shelter to help, but Max is attacked and Laura, after dragging Max up the stairs, sees him get dragged back down into the shelter screaming, and Laura is then injected with something by the sheriff who followed them to the camp. 2 months later, summer camp is over and the kids are leaving on a bus, whilst our merry band of camp counsellors prepare to leave and load up their minivan. These counsellors are Abigail, Dylan, Emma, Jacob, Caitlin, Nick and Ryan. Jacob has been having a summer fling with Emma. The thing is, Emma only really sees it as a summer fling and Jacob sees it as much more. They're going to be going to separate colleges which are 4 states apart, and Emma doesn't want a long distance relationship. Anyway, who even cares? Jacob sabotages the minivan just so he can spend one last evening with Emma. Mr. H, Chris Hackett, shows up and asks the group if they're ready to leave. Eventually the group is ready to leave and Jacob tries to start up the minivan, but given that he sabotaged it, it won't start. Chris tries and fails to start the minivan and he is furious. Like, really mad. He really needs them to leave and says it's because hunting season starts the moment summer camp finishes, and he doesn't want the group to be in danger from hunters and bears. He panics and leaves, but puts Ryan in charge of their group and instructs him to keep everyone indoors and inside the lodge for the night. Of course, the moment that Chris leaves, the group's first plan is to have a party. I mean, who could blame them, to be honest, after 2 solid months of babysitting? A plan is hatched. Jacob and Emma go to the nearby general store to find beers, and Ryan and Dylan go somewhere to charge their phones. But they're being watched by a couple of mysterious hunters who seem to be smearing blood on themselves. Skipping forward a few hours, everyone is around the campfire, and the group play a game of truth or dare. But drama is never too far away. You see, Nick and Abby like one another, and Emma gets dared by Caitlin to kiss either Jacob, her ex-boyfriend, or Nick. In an attempt to torment Jacob and make him jealous, she of course chooses Nick. Obviously, Abby isn't too happy about this and walks off into the forest, with Nick going after her, and Jacob storms off too, and Emma goes off in pursuit of him. Nick eventually catches up with Abby, and after sharing their first kiss together, it appears that they are being stalked by, well, something. This something attacks them and bites Nick. Whatever this thing is, it's huge, and contrary to everyone's fears, it's definitely not a bear. Someone shoots the creature from the shadows, but this barely seems to even wound it. Abby's scream along with the gunshot alerts Jacob and Emma, who have ended up swimming in the lake, and Jacob ditches Emma and runs to investigate, leaving her in the water, and she swims to the island in the middle of the lake. After initially trying to help Nick, Abby gets out of there and runs to the camp to get help from the others back at the campfire. Ryan goes to save Nick and sees him getting dragged off by Bobby, one of the hunters. Ryan can choose to shoot Bobby, but due to the distance, the shotgun barely wounds him. If he doesn't shoot, then Nick ends up biting Bobby's finger and runs to Ryan. Then Bobby shoots his own finger off. Back at camp, there is a serious concern for Nick, who seems to be in bad shape. The wound on his leg is oozing black stuff, and a concerned Dylan says that they should amputate, an idea which the group quickly reject. They make a group decision to move back to the safety of the lodge. Upon arriving, Ryan and Dylan try to use the phone in Mr. H's office, but after dialing 911, the phone line seems to get cut. And when you have a look at Mr. H's phone, it's pretty clear now why Laura's voicemail message was never received. Dylan remembers that there's some radio equipment in the radio hut which they could use to call for help. They manage to reach someone, but this doesn't go to plan. They end up reaching the hunters, who become very much aware of their position. At that moment, they're trapped in the hut by another creature. And to Ryan's dismay, he sees Nick, Caitlin and Abby walking towards the radio hut, and Ryan frantically tells them to get into a nearby hut due to the creature being out there. Dylan hatches a plan to use the hut's speakers and create a high-pitched feedback loop to scare off the creature. Whilst rigging it up, Dylan is savagely attacked by the creature and is bitten on his hand. Dylan yells at Ryan to amputate, and in true horror slasher fashion, yep, chainsaw time. Ryan takes a chainsaw to Dylan's hand, severing it. The plan, however, did work and scared the creature off, but as the group move towards the pool house, they hear shots and a splash, followed by a mysterious woman wearing an eye patch hopping over the wall. Investigating, they find the dead body of Mr. H's daughter, Kaylee Hackett, floating in the pool, with this mysterious woman having shot her, and they move into the pool house. Meanwhile, Jacob catches up with Emma, and after they are chased by a creature, they get separated again, and Jacob gets caught in a bear trap and is knocked out by one of the hunters. Back at the pool house, Nick's behaviour drastically changes. He grabs Abby and throws her against the wall. Hesitating, she gets up and picks up the shotgun, shooting Nick. The shot doesn't kill him, but this happens. Nick has turned into a werewolf. During their attempts to process what on earth just happened, they hear a knock on the door. It's the woman from earlier. More importantly, this woman is Laura Kearney, the counsellor who went missing along with her boyfriend Max 2 months earlier. She explains to them that the county sheriff, who is revealed to be Mr. H's brother Travis, had locked them up for 2 months, and she confirms to the group that the things they are dealing with are indeed werewolves, and not bears as the group initially thought. What's more is that she reveals that Chris Hackett, Mr. H, is the one who bit Max. Yep, that's right, Max is alive, Chris Hackett is a werewolf, Max therefore is now also a werewolf. Max was taken, whilst in human form, to the island by Laura at some point, but Max bit her. But we'll dive a little bit further into that in a bit. Anyway, she needs to kill Chris Hackett to save Max, and Ryan goes with her to the Hackett residence. It's revealed that the two hunters are Jedediah Hackett, Chris Hackett's father, and Bobby Hackett, Chris Hackett's brother. Jacob, who was previously captured by Jedediah Hackett, is dragged into the Hackett's basement and locked inside some electrified cages, with one of the other cages containing a werewolf. More specifically, Nick in his werewolf form after he was captured by Jedediah and Bobby. It turns out that Jedediah and Bobby Hackett were actually trying to save the counsellors and had no intention of harming them at all. Now, the matriarch of the family is Constance Hackett, and after Laura and Ryan reach the basement and free Jacob, Laura is captured by Constance while she is eavesdropping on a conversation with her and Travis, and a struggle ensues. Laura then blows Constance's face clean off, and a distraught Jedediah Hackett chases after Laura. Ryan is stabbed by Bobby, and escapes via a dumbwaiter. Laura is confronted by Jedediah and they fight. Laura kills the power and eventually meets up with Ryan, who is bleeding out fast. Laura, now turning into a werewolf herself, tells Ryan that if he lets her bite him, his knife wound will heal and he will survive. He agrees. They go to the attic of the house and there they find Chris Hackett in his monstrous werewolf form. He breaks free from his chains and Ryan, Laura and werewolf Chris all fall through the floor. A fight ensues as Chris attacks his family members. Now Laura turns at this point and attacks Travis. Ryan stands up and shoots Chris with a shotgun loaded with shells containing silver, a werewolf's kryptonite. This breaks Max's werewolf curse, and because Max bit Laura, it breaks her curse too. Despite this, Travis Hackett mentions to Laura that even though she and Max are now cured, this is far from over. See, the werewolf that initially bit Chris was his son Caleb. Travis says that they can save him by killing the werewolf that bit Caleb. This is a werewolf called Silas. Now Silas is the progenitor of this curse. If they can kill Silas, then they can save Caleb. Travis, Laura and Ryan leave in a police car to find Silas before the full moon is over and before dawn arrives. On the way, their car is attacked by Silas. They eventually track him to his nest, if you like, and this is the area where Laura saw Silas's cage 2 months earlier. Laura shoots Silas and the curse ends. Caleb isn't saved though, as whatever happens, he dies, either by being shot by Caitlin with silver or being lured into a freezer and freezing to death in his human form. Police turn up at the summer camp and the game then ends, with all of the camp counselors having survived. So in the game, the camp counselors get a visit from Laura Kearney. Now, I purposely left out the details of what exactly happened to her and Max after they were approached by Travis Hackett and the camp, so I could include it in its own section. So after this, Max was being mauled by Chris Hackett in the storm shelter underneath the lodge as Laura was sedated by Travis. Travis then shoots down into the storm shelter, shooting his brother Chris in the process, but this only serves as a way to scare him off. He then drags Max out of the storm shelter and rushes the both of them to the police station, putting them in separate cells. And this is why. Max wakes up the next morning very confused as to why, 1, he is naked, and 2, more importantly, without a single scratch on him, despite being bitten and mauled by Chris Hackett hours earlier. Max puts the idea to Laura that maybe he's a werewolf, but she tells him that he must be out of his mind. Over the course of a few weeks, it's time for another full moon. Over those few weeks, Laura remains unconvinced with the fact that her boyfriend could possibly be a werewolf. She attempts to gain the trust of Sheriff Travis, but he's not falling for it. As he's leaving, she tells him that they know that Max is a werewolf, so he then chains her to a radiator and tells her to sit there, telling her not to get too close. Then the inevitable happens. The full moon arrives and Max's transformation begins. And Laura, covered in blood and in shock at what she just witnessed, werewolf Max swipes at her, ripping her eye out and scratching her face. Laura, who has a keen interest in veterinary practice, manages to treat herself. After the full moon has passed, Max is back to his human form again, and after apologising, they form a plan to escape Travis's custody. After Chris Hackett visits the police station, Laura puts 2 and 2 together and realises that Chris Hackett was the werewolf that bit Max. She also realises that in order to break Max's curse, she needs to kill the werewolf who bit Max. Therefore, she needs to kill Chris. Laura, while searching the station after her eye injury, found more syringes containing the drugs Travis used to drug her at the camp. She fakes injury in her cell and injects Travis, and her and Max escape. They steal a police car, ditch it, and arrive at the summer camp. They travel to the island in the middle of the lake and start a fire, which is the fire that Emma and Abigail see from the fire pit. Laura then travels to the main part of the quarry and sets about hunting werewolf Chris. This leads us up to the moment that she shoots Kaylee Hackett after mistaking her for Chris. Now Laura returned to the island thinking that she'd shot and killed Chris, lifting Max's curse, but this didn't go well. Because she killed Kaylee instead, Max was still very much in his werewolf form and tried to attack Laura, biting her arm in the process. She figured the camp counsellors would know where to find Chris Hackett, and that in turn leads to Laura knocking on the door of the pool house to ask for their help. As we know, Chris Hackett had 2 kids, Caleb and Kaylee. One night on October 27th, 2015, 6 years before the events of the game took place, Chris took his kids to see the travelling magic show called Harem Scarum. This magic show featured a fortune teller called Eliza Vorez and a rather peculiar act. Eliza's son, Silas, was what was advertised as a wolf boy. Eliza thought that she could make a lot of money from her wolf boy, so she had him caged and paraded for he would turn into a werewolf upon a full moon. Kaylee Hackett felt pity for this boy, Silas, so she convinced her brother Caleb to start a fire and help the wolf boy escape. Their plan went tits up though, as Silas managed to get free and bit Caleb, cursing him, and Silas ran off, disappearing into the woods. A massive fire broke out from there, and County Sheriff at the time, Sheriff Hank Miller, died in the blaze, as well as Silas's mother Eliza, among other victims. In the aftermath, upon investigation, arson wasn't suspected at all, and the incident was chalked down to a tragic accident. Being that the fire broke out on Hackett family property, the family requested that members of the public avoided the area due to ongoing investigations around the fire. Travis Hackett was then promoted to County Sheriff after the demise of Sheriff Miller. With Travis's position as a sheriff, the Hacketts did their best to cover up any involvement in the Harem Scarum fire, and scrapped signage and flyers in the hope that everyone would eventually forget about the fire. They missed some flyers and various items though, such as this escapologist's trunk. The tragedy did not end there though, as Caleb, now cursed and infected, bit his father and sister, cursing them too. Anyway, the Hackett family would take action and eventually order electrified cages in order to keep Chris, Kaylee and Caleb in there during a full moon to prevent the spilling of innocent blood. Travis, on the other hand, as well as Bobby and Jedediah Hackett, would spend entire evenings during the full moon hunting Silas, or the White Wolf, in order to kill him and break the curse upon his family members, but they always failed to find him. That's why Travis was so inquisitive when Max and Laura said that they crashed after avoiding something in the road. Travis thought that Silas would be nearby. Chris even went to the extent of setting up trail cameras in the woods, hoping to spot Silas, making tapes of every full moon. Not a cheap thing to set up, and as a result the summer camp was falling into disrepair. This forced Chris to ask the parents of the kids for an extra 5% on top of their camp fees in order to fix the crumbling and very dangerous chimney column. Over the next 6 years, people would go missing in the woods on Hackett property due to Silas attacking them, including 2 hikers named Anne Radcliffe and Edward Benson in January 2021. Conspiracy theories were birthed that the 2 missing hikers were attacked by a bear, but these claims were discredited by local wildlife experts. We can see Edward Benson at the bottom of the lake. Turns out that the Hackett family were doing whatever they could to cover up any deaths caused by Chris, Kaylee, Caleb or Silas, and due to this they would prohibit swimming in the lake, only allowing activities such as sailing, and judging from the rules for sailing, if a boat capsized, people were not allowed to jump into the water. If they did, well, then they'd meet the bloated corpse of Edward Benson. You see, the local wildlife experts saw that there were basically barely any animals left in Hackett's quarry. Most of them were hunted or killed by Bobby and Jedediah after the animals were bitten by werewolves, and the hunters killed them in fear of these animals turning themselves. Travis Hackett would arrest and imprison anyone who got too close to the truth, judging by the limerick scratched into the wall in Laura's cell. Just before the events of the game, the local podcast, Bizarre Yet Bonafide, would make conspiracy podcasts on the legends of Hackett's Quarry and Hackett Woods. One particular podcast about local legend, the Hag of Hackett's Quarry, irritated Chris Hackett so much to the point that he told Travis to issue a cease and desist letter, ordering them to stop talking about Hackett's Quarry. Bad for business, or just a sensitive subject? Bizarre Yet Bonafide would never actually receive this letter, as Travis had left it on the copier and hadn't sent it yet. Now this leads to the moment that Max and Laura make the fateful decision to travel to Hackett's Quarry summer camp a day early. That fateful night, Chris, after locking himself in the storm shelter, ended up killing and eating the camp mascot Ian, a sheep, which explains the bloodied collar that Laura found in there. Judging from this note from the Hackett scrapyard, Travis ordered Max's car scrapped and kept off the books to avoid any suspicion over Max and Laura's disappearance, leading to Caitlin and Dylan finding the car at the scrapyard when in search of car parts. Chris Hackett would then claim that Max and Laura changed their mind about becoming camp counselors and that they simply didn't show up. As with most horror films, there are red herrings everywhere, the most prominent being the identity of the hunters, Jedediah and Bobby. The game wants to make you think that the hunters are the threat, but that gradually changes when you realise that all they're trying to do is contain the threat of the werewolves and hunt down Silas to end the curse that is plaguing their family. When they realised that the teens were stuck there, they did everything they could to protect them, such as blooding them and saving them from attacks. At one point, even after Emma attacks them, she runs off and they attempt to draw a creature's attention so she can escape. But after Laura killed Kaylee, Constance's mood towards preventing the spilling of blood was thrown out of the window when Travis informed her that her granddaughter Kaylee had been killed. She became verbally abusive towards Travis, and at this point, the Hackett family turned hostile towards the counsellors, as they now wanted to avenge Kaylee's death. We should probably take a look at the Hackett family history in order to fill some gaps. The Hackett family roots stretch way back, and the family have pretty much always lived in the area. The oldest relative mentioned in the game is a man called Septimus Hackett, who was born in 1890. He had a son, Francis, who himself had a son, Jedediah. Septimus ran the quarry when it was actually a functioning quarry. The quarry was very rich in a rock called quartzite, a metamorphic rock which was previously used in the prehistoric era to make stone tools. Septimus Hackett, however, couldn't sustain the quarry and was losing money. So sometime in the 1930s, he shut the quarry down, laid off the workers in the quarry and flooded it, turning it back into an area of natural beauty. The lake would then be named Lake Septimus. Years before that though, and connected to the quarry itself, were rum running tunnels, as the Hackett family had been involved in rum running during the American Prohibition of the 1920s. They still have the rum stills underneath their property. Hackett's Quarry Summer Camp would then be established in 1953 and was presumably run by Jedediah and Constance Hackett until Chris Hackett took over some years later with his wife Amelia. According to the Hackett family tree, Chris was at some point widowed due to Amelia dying in 1999, and judging from the fact that Kaylee was born in 1999, this was potentially from complications due to childbirth. Chris would then continue to run the summer camp after the death of his wife. The ghost story of the Hag of Hackett's Quarry was very present in the game. Ryan would tell the story to the kids around the campfire. All was fine until these kids started seeing the Hag of Hackett's Quarry in the woods. Some kids would draw pictures of the apparition they saw in the woods and would write letters discussing how scared they were. The legend, as told by Ryan, goes like this.
Paranormal podcast. This episode was actually about this place, weirdly enough. The Hag of Hackett's Quarry. It's just this campfire story for the kids. It's there's supposedly an old woman who died in a fire a few years back. She haunts the woods looking for her lost baby boy. There are like reports of whispers or whatever, and this figure that floats around, textbook ghost stuff. Some people say that if she catches you alone, she'll try to turn you into her son. Or kill you, or something. I don't know. It's never really been clear. Anyways, Hag of Hackett's Quarry.
Cool story, bro.
On the night of the fire, Silas's mother Eliza walked through the burning remains of her magic show and saw that her son was gone. Eliza died as a result of the fire, and over the next 6 years, her spirit, or the ghost of Eliza, would walk around Hackett Woods looking for a boy. Chris would ask Ryan to refrain from telling the ghost stories around the camp, not because it was bad for business, but because he knew deep down that it was a real story. Eliza would audibly whisper and appear much like she did to Laura and Max after their car incident.
I think if I tried a cell phone number on this thing, it would just explode though. Hello? What?
What?
In the game, Eliza is the fortune teller, kind of like a new curator who reads tarot cards and gives glimpses into future events. But the counsellors hearing her voice doesn't just serve as a spooky experience. She's whispering to the counsellors when they're about to make a key decision that can further her goals. Given that she's a vengeful spirit, she has little to no physical influence over events, but can influence counsellors to make decisions themselves. It's very obvious that she harbours a massive grudge against the Hacketts, and she barely hides her delight when a member of the Hackett family is killed. The opposite can be said if you don't kill one of the Hackett family. Now, quite where Silas came from in the first place, I don't know. It's very likely that it was a result of his mother dabbling in black magic, resulting in Silas being cursed. So first off, due to the counsellors taking so long to leave, and of course after Jacob sabotaged the minivan, Caleb and Kaylee didn't have time to make it back to the Hackett house and into the electrified cages, so they turned whilst in the woods. There was a repellent, blood. If you smeared werewolf blood on yourself, this would throw off your scent and confuse the werewolves. This is why the hunters smeared it on themselves, with Bobby taking it to the extreme. Werewolves are also highly sensitive to silver. It's their kryptonite, if you like. With the game being so darn dark, these werewolves are pretty much impossible to tell apart, so let's have a look and see which werewolf was which. So here's what I think, and let's start with Chris. Chris was in the storm shelter, he bit Max and was shot by Travis, who luckily for Chris didn't use silver bullets. 2 months later, Chris made it back to the family home and was chained up in the attic by his family. Max was taken to the island and was the one who had tried to attack Emma on the island and attacked Laura. Kaylee Hackett was the one who Laura killed after she mistook her for Chris. Caleb Hackett was the werewolf that cornered Caitlin and Dylan in the lodge, and then Silas was the one that attacked Nick and Abby and attacked the police car at the end of the game. What's interesting about these werewolves are their abilities and characteristics before they turn. I mean, there's the outrageous healing properties that allowed Nick to go from this to this, and to allow Laura to literally regenerate her lost eye, as well as healing Ryan of his stab wound inflicted by Bobby. Just as a quick side note as well, Laura can also be shot in the head by Constance, which does nothing to her as seen here. In addition, they hate water. In fact, they have an extreme case of hydrophobia, as seen here with Nick, when after being pretty hostile and creepy towards Abby by the pool, she pushes him in and he freaks out whilst in the water. This bears some similarities to the rabies virus. They have very sensitive hearing, even attacking after hearing someone breathing, and they possess incredible strength, much like that of a bear, with their ability to decapitate someone with one swipe. But one of the most interesting things is the revealing of emotions. We see this through Chris Hackett at the start of the game. This normally mild-mannered camp counsellor absolutely loses it at Caitlin and the other counsellors in response to the minivan, and he slams the hood and screams. Very out of character. Another with Max when he's about to turn in the jail cell. Laura asks him to come closer so she can see him and he says this.
Is this fucking close enough for you, bitch?
But the best study into this is through Nick. Nick, after striking up a close relationship with Abby, begins to show his true motives. Through conversation, Abby reveals to Nick that he completely ignored her on the first day of camp and that she thought he was a bit of a dick. But what made him change his feelings toward her? Well, after he's bitten, Nick lashes out at Abby a few times. First time in the nurse's station, and then by the pool, he exhibits, well, really creepy behaviour. He berates Abby later on and reveals to her that he only showed an interest in her out of pity. Maybe Nick did like Abby but was trying to hurt her feelings due to her leaving him out in the woods after he was attacked. Seems like this curse prompts the sufferer, or the person who's turning into a werewolf, to display their true emotions in that time. Then there's the method of infection. According to Travis, infection can only spread through a bite and not scratches, which is why Laura wasn't infected after werewolf Max took her eye out. This is why Bobby shoots his own finger off if he's bitten by an already bitten Nick, to stop the infection spreading. So it seems that Dylan, even though he didn't really have any idea of what was happening and what bit Nick, was right about cutting off the affected limb. At certain points throughout the night, the counsellors have an opportunity to collect evidence in order to prove their innocence and clear their names. I mean, how else would you explain all this craziness? The evidence collected consists of an empty vial of blood which was used to mask human scent, torn bags likely belonging to Anne and Edward, the bloated corpse of Edward Benson, the attack photo taken by Emma, claw marks outside the radio hut of which Dylan takes a photo, a memory card from a camera showing missing hikers being in Hackett's Quarry, the bizarre yet bona fide cease and desist letter in the police station, scarred flesh in the underground tunnels likely left over from a transformation, Kaylee Hackett's letter to Constance, her grandmother, in regards to her guilt about the fire and their resulting curse, and trail camera footage collected by Chris Hackett and found by Caitlin in the lodge. Unlike Until Dawn, and quite disappointingly I must say, there was no interview footage from police interviews at the end of the game to give us an idea of what happened to our camp counsellors. Instead, we got a bizarre yet bona fide podcast with a news headline telling us the fate of the counsellors. This podcast was very long, but on the basis that all the counsellors survived and the werewolf curse ended, and all evidence was collected, it says psycho teens charged after summer camp massacre. It appears that they have been charged, but during the podcast it's revealed that Grace and Anton, the podcasters, have been sent the evidence by an unknown person in the hope that it will clear the names of the councillors. After Grace and Anton look at the evidence, they seem convinced that a lot more happened than what they'd been told. There's a cover-up, a conspiracy, but Grace and Anton sign off by saying they need to expose it. But right at the end, it appears that Grace and Anton took the evidence to the police, and this meant that the charges against the councillors were dropped and their names were cleared. The bizarre Yet Bonafide podcast is one that comes up throughout the game, and actually has a part to play in the story, being that Chris became disgruntled with their podcast discussing Hackett Woods and portraying it as haunted and the home of many local legends. Podcasts were made, and you can find them on the Quarry's official website, where Grace and Anton discussed local legends such as ghosts, spirits, missing hikers, victims of animal attacks, Bigfoot sightings, etc. At the time of writing this video, there is still one podcast to come on the Hag of Hackett's Quarry. But in episode 5, Grace travels to stay at the Harbinger Motel, as she's headed for Hackett Woods in order to try and get a sighting of the Hag of Hackett's Quarry. She mentions Eliza's travelling show. She also mentions that the clerk at the hotel seemed like he wanted to talk about the fire, but he couldn't talk about it at the same time. But later on, when camping in Hackett Woods, she keeps hearing things outside her tent. We are still to see what happens in episode 6, as at the time of releasing this video, the podcast hasn't released yet. But hopefully this one sheds more light on the Hag of Hackett's Quarry. I guess we'll just have to wait to find out. But that is it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Leave a comment down below on your thoughts, but for now, take care and I'll see you in the next one.